Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to review a film either current or classic. And this week we're staying true to our tried and true formula. We're going to be reviewing a current film that would normally be out in movie theaters right now. Of course, given the hashtag COVID quarantine, we're not able to go to movie theaters except for the ones we create in our homes. Movie theaters are in our heart. We always carry our hearts with us, which means, guys, we're always at the movie theater. How deep is that? Not very deep. But
deep enough. We'll count it.
Oh, goodness. Well, let me introduce you to those voices you're hearing. Jim Poliavko is with us on the show. Hey, sweetheart. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for the intro, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Glad to have you with us, sweetie. And Will Lindis is here, too. Welcome, Will. How's things in your neck of the woods?
Things in my neck of the woods are a lot the same. Keeping it isolated, staying inside the house. We are now under, here in Austin, if you go out into public, you are required to wear a mask edict. So, so what was once a strong recommendation is now the law. And that's been interesting to watch play out. I don't know. It's our new normal.
Yeah. Indeed. Well, one of the things I'm grateful for during this crazy, crazy time is we can still have our normal on this show because we've been getting together remotely since the beginning, save for a couple special occasions during the year typically. So it really hasn't slowed our roll too much, except in terms of seeing movies. Of course, we're kind of, under the thumb of what's released to view right now. And thankfully, the film we're reviewing this week, Trolls World Tour, was released for a $19.99 rental on a lot of the different streaming platforms. So whether you watch this in a projector room, whether you watch it on the couch with your pets, you can still see a brand new movie, and maybe you already have over the weekend. I don't know about you guys, but I think it's pretty great that we can still access some new movies, at least, while this is going on.
It's vital. I felt like coming into this, like there was a very real possibility that the next few months would be nothing but pouring over like older films and like watching Netflix and like exhausting Netflix, and just the fact that we can still watch something new and still have these conversations about something new, just I don't know. It reminds me that the world's still turning.
Yeah, it's great that technology and a lot of times we'll lament kind of the march of technology and maybe the demise. Up until this last month or so, we've been kind of lamenting the demise of the movie theater experience, right? And how, oh boy, with all these streaming services are just becoming more and more popular, and more releases are going straight to VOD, and the movie theater, the movie theater experience seems to be diminishing. And then this happens, and boom! I think it just like propelled us like, 5 or 6 years down the road, just like that. But it's a double-edged sword, because I think we're glad that we have some of those outlets for movies or sources for movies to go watch. We'll find out if this one is worth going through the effort to watch. But I'm just glad that we have that option to watch movies in this way.
Yeah, me too. I'm curious what's going to happen after all of this calms down. And I don't want to get too deeply into it, but will we see a straight to streaming model moving forward from all this? I'm very curious to find out how that's all going to shake out. Mm-hmm. But I definitely am looking forward to getting back into real brick and mortar movie theaters when we are able to do that. I won't tip my hat too much, but I feel like maybe this could have enhanced the experience of seeing Trolls World Tour for me. Um, Jim's making big eyes, but I'm excited to talk about this film with you guys. I think it's going to be a fun discussion. I don't know that we'll fill a whole 45 minutes we have budgeted with Troll Talk, but we'll see how we do. We'll see how we do.
TT Troll Talk.
That's right. Just want to give a quick shout out to those who have jumped onto the live stream with us. Hello. Be sure to say hello in chat. Let us know your thoughts on Trolls World Tour. You are hearing 2 paws up already from one of the pups on Will's end. Will, I don't know if the pup's tipping your hat, but maybe that's a preview. We'll see. Question mark.
Find out soon. Find out soon.
All right. Well, listen, we are going to talk Trolls World Tour spoiler free for probably 10 or 15 minutes or so. Then before we go into spoilers, will give you a warning if you're in the live chat so you know to step away for 20 minutes and then come back for plugs. Or if you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay, you can use the handy dandy time index in the show notes to skip around as needed. So just an FYI on that. Also, FYI, Jim discovered something that I just realized, babe, you may want to talk about in case anyone goes back to listen to last week's Grizz Tracks episode before we get into our review. What did you discover about that third-party podcast app?
So I use the Overcast app for my podcasts. And after we posted the show, I went back to listen. Before I post the show, of course, we do some post-production to make sure things are going to line up, especially with these Grizz tracks, so that we have a synced up audio commentary track to go with the movie. And everything was good. We released the show, and I went to listen back to it on my Overcast app while I was watching the movie on TV. And right off the bat, I noticed things were kind of getting way out of sync. And I'm like, what is going on? What did I screw up this time? So I went back and after a little bit of research, found out, no, the file we put up on the server is fine. The sync is great. The problem is with the playback through the Overcast app. And I don't know which other apps do this, but I think there may be some.
Yeah.
They have an automatic kind of skip ahead feature. So when there's a period of silence, like longer than, I don't know, maybe 2 seconds or whatever, they automatically just skip ahead to the next bit of audio content. And so that is great for listening to to listen to a lot of podcasts that are just talk and stuff like that if there's gaps, but it's not great when you're trying to do an audio sync with a movie. So I could not find out that it was if you could disable that feature or not. It is automatic. I couldn't find it. So just beware if you're listening to the Grizz Tracks. We'll try to figure something out for our net before we put out our next Grizz Tracks, kind of as a note to put in the file. But for now, just beware of that if you are using Overcast with our Grizz Tracks episode.
Yeah, definitely good to call that out. I know with Apple Podcasts and Spotify, we don't run into that issue, but some other third-party apps have a similar feature to Overcast. So anytime we post a show, and Will is our web wizard, and Will, thank you so much for doing that. We always put a direct download link on the episode page. So if you're listening to your normal podcast app and it's skipping the silence and it's out of sync, feel free to download that direct file and then just listen to that. And that should keep you in sync with Grizz Tracks. And last week, we Grizz Tracks Little Shop of Horrors. That was so much fun. If you haven't had a chance to go back and experience that yet, please feel free. Just if it seems out of sync, check your podcast app. That may be why. I wanted to just talk about that real quick because, Jim, believe it or not, you were not the only one to call that out. Someone messaged us a couple days later. I'm gonna keep their name off the show because they were kind of ranting at me, and it was a little uncomfortable. I won't lie. with a a hard criticism of us not getting our own show right, and it turns out it was their podcast app doing the same thing that yours was. So, yeah.
Yeah, we can only work with the technology as best it does. There's a lot of these things that are, I mean, these little things that are put into these applications are designed to make our lives better, but sometimes just the automatic nature of them overcorrects and diminishes quality in other areas. So, I mean, what can you do? We've got some other ways for you to check it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for reminding me about that. Sorry you had to field that comment. You'll have to show it to me later.
Yeah, Daniel Jensen in the chat. Hey, Daniel says, "Eat that crow." Ha ha ha. It was not Daniel who made that comment to me, but I'm not really eating crow because, to quote Han Solo, it's not my fault. We didn't do anything wrong, so we did it all right. So how about we feed that crow to somebody else? I don't even know if that analogy works, but
let's just release that crow.
Yeah,
how about we send a raven?
I think Daniel meant to the person who commented us to eat crow.
Oh, you know what? That makes a lot more sense. Daniel says the rancher should eat that crow. Okay, that does make a lot more sense. It's been a crazy day. It's been a crazy week. You know what would make it less crazy for me, guys?
I think I know.
Having an awesome movie conversation with two of the people I love most in life. So let's do it. We are going to talk Trolls World Tour. We'll kick things off, non-spoilery. We'll give you the spoiler warning before we take you to Spoiler Pound Town. But Jim, Will, are you hunkered down and ready to go?
Let's do it.
I'm poptimistic. Let's go.
Poptimistic. Oh man, that's a good one. That pun rocked.
Yeah, babe, that's a classic.
I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a lot of funky puns this episode.
Oh, what? Oh, goodness. All right. We're off to the races already, and we haven't even said go officially. So we'll do that right now. Here we go. Our discussion of Trolls World Tour. All right. So, Will, if you would just do us a favor, for those who may be unfamiliar, or, those who maybe have seen it but just need a reminder, what's the premise of Trolls World Tour? And maybe give us your thoughts, spoiler-free, of course, on was this worth seeing on a $20 rental? Would you maybe say this is something you would maybe see when it comes to like a $4.99 rental, or would you skip it entirely?
Hey, so yeah, of course. Trolls World Tour is the follow-up sequel to Trolls. And in that movie, our main characters of Poppy and Branch, which are Anna Kendrick and Justin Timberlake, set out on an adventure and learned that their world is a little bit bigger than they had originally imagined. Well, Poppy and Branch are back here, and they discover that the Pop Trolls, are just one of 6 different types of troll tribes that are scattered all across the world. We've got funk trolls, we got country trolls, techno trolls, classical trolls, the pop trolls, and of course, the rock trolls. But this isn't
in between.
A bunch of premise is the 6 trolls, but the conflict comes when one of those troll tribes, the rock trolls, led by Queen Barb, decide to set out on their own adventure to try to grab all of these musical strings and enslave all of the trolls under the brand of rock. This is a very much a skewing younger movie, and I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind. Sometimes it's very easy for me to grade every single movie that falls under the umbrella of animation exactly the same, when realistically, there are certain movies like, Ghibli and Pixar, for example, which are ones that we universally praise here, tend to skew towards a slightly older audience than I think the Trolls audience, the intended audience is. So I keep all of that in mind when I look at this. And ultimately, I had a good enough time with this movie. It's doesn't have the depth, it doesn't have like the complexity, and it doesn't have all of like the big feels that those other ones have. And so because of that, it's not going to be one of those movies that's like, oh, top 10 movie, or got to rush out and see this. That said, it's fun, it's light, it has a good message that it delivers well upon, as it's sort of like, as the characters sort of realize both kind of what they're doing right and maybe what they're doing wrong. They get to some fun realizations that I think are pretty important. For the most part, I like the voice actors and actresses here. I think Anna Kendrick and Justin Timberlake have good chemistry as the main characters, and I think that's important. Even for two people who are not generally considered like voice actors, I think they do a pretty fine job here. And I was especially impressed with, and this doesn't strike me as a huge surprise, but the antagonist is played by Rachel Bloom, who is the lead and sort of driving force behind Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is a musical pop medley show that absolutely blew me away. And I loved seeing her in this. I think that she just brought so much energy to this. Look, if you're looking for like the $19.99 versus the $4.99 price ticket is going to 100% depend on your sensibilities, which I know is sort of a cop-out, but I think it's especially true in this situation because for me, I had a good enough time. This probably could have been a $4.99 rental. That said, I know I've talked to 3 people who have children that are in the range of this, and they say that they did the 48-hour $19.99 rental and were on their 7th or 8th watch by the time the 48 hours ended. So it was something that they and the family were able to just like put on and repeat and enjoy. So I enjoyed this one. Again, I didn't love this one. It doesn't hit on all cylinders, but it's cute and it does the things that it does well enough. And there's movies that are like this that have like that get on my nerves. This one did not get on my nerves, and I think that's already clearing like a pretty high bar.
All right. Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts, Will. Jim, were you as positive on this one as Will was?
I don't think for myself, I don't think it was a super positive experience, but I'm taking to heart what Will said. Like, I think if you have kids, I think kids would eat this up like candy. I think this is eye and ear candy for kids, mostly with a little bit of a social message thrown in there. And we'll get into a little bit of that, probably more in spoilers, but, messages of acceptance and diversity and kind of community, what a real community is, and things like that. And so I think if it was obvious watching it that this is really mainly for kids. There's not much in here, I don't think, for adults. And you could tell because it moves so quickly, like from one thing to another. It's for short attention spans. It's not trying to stitch together this mood or anything. This is just a really rapid, it hits all the plot points and character points really fast. It jumps from, there's a lot of music in this, mostly covers, I think. I'm not sure if it's all covers. It may even be all covers, for all I know. And even in that, you don't get a full song. You might get like just half of a chorus or half of a verse and a chorus or something like that, kind of done in the Glee style. If you guys remember watching Glee at all, this is like Trolls doing Glee a little bit. And it covers the several different styles of music, as we said, pop, funk, rock, country, help me out, pop, classical, what was
yodeling?
Techno is the 6th one, right? And so, and I know, Brad, you talk about like if you really love movies with music in it, you go right out and you buy the soundtrack. That's kind of your litmus test of like whether you like movies. I'm guessing that you did not go out and gobble up the soundtrack for this. Am I right or wrong?
We'll find out.
We'll find out. Okay.
This is your review, Jim.
My review is I would not, unless you have kids or you think something like, like an animated Trolls doing Glee, is up your alley. I would not spend the $20 on this yet. I might wait till the price comes down, or it's, you're able to rent it, or who knows, it'll probably show up. It won't show up on Disney, but it might show up on like Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or something. But yeah, for me, and we've seen both of these movies now. What's fun for me in these movies always is, and we knew from the first movie who some of the main characters were going to be voiced by, but it's always fun to try to guess before you look at the credits who's like, oh, I think I recognize that voice. Who is that?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll sit on the couch and we'll go back and forth like, is that who I think it is? Is that so-and-so?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And then, you get the phone out and you start looking. But so that was fun in this movie. And to see some of the names, we'll talk about those too. We'll talk about Sam Rockwell and George Clinton is in this, and Ozzy Osbourne shows up in this. So it's got a fun cast, and it's fun in that sense. The songs, I think, like I said, you only get snippets of the songs, and they're kind of, I think, weak representations of the songs. I don't think that the movie brings anything new out in these songs, and it doesn't have any original songs. Daniel in chat says, how about compared to the first movie? I'll just say that there were elements, stronger elements in the first movie that I kind of enjoyed. There were some character things going on in that movie that I thought was really good between I'll just say between a king and a would-be princess that I thought was pretty well done. This movie I thought lacked any of that, unfortunately. So I would say that the first movie has an edge on this movie, but that's just me. Brad, your turn. Tell us about the soundtrack. Tell us what you liked.
Okay. I'm going to go with Daniel's question first. He said compared to the first movie. I'm going to say I actually liked Trolls World Tour a lot better than the first movie.
Huh.
We watched the first one Friday night, and I will never get that Friday night back. And I resent that. But I liked Trolls World Tour much more than the first. But Jim, to your question, did I pass my own Brad Harris, go out and buy the soundtrack immediately after watching the movie litmus test? The answer is no. I did not go out and buy the soundtrack. And no, I will not be buying this soundtrack. Not because it's like the worst music in the universe. It's just, I'm not the audience for it, I think. And Jim, you mentioned the whole like Gleeification of this movie. And I think that's such an apt way of putting that. Like, I think we were watching the movie and we turned to each other at the same time and we're like, this is just like Glee. And that's so incredibly true. I think what would make this a little stronger for me is if we did get full songs rather than 30 to 45 seconds per song. Like, they would start to do a song, and we'll talk more in spoilers, and I would just start to get into it. And I'd be like, all right, I'm kind of digging this a little bit. And then, oh, nope, we got to switch it to another song. And that song maybe was not so good. So I wish I could extend the performances that I liked and maybe get rid of some of the ones that weren't so great. But then again, this is made for kids. They do have short attention spans. Also, I think these movies want to get in as many like pop culture and music references in as they can, right? And kind of maximize on like padding a soundtrack that people will go out and maybe potentially buy. I know that I have a friend from high school. Her two kids want the soundtrack to this movie, and it's a double-edged sword right now because, the movie's available to rent for 48 hours. They want to keep watching it. 48 hours is over. the parents don't want to keep spending $20 to rent it over and over
20
again
bucks
so the
every
kids
2
can watch
days.
it.
Yeah.
You know, like, so it's like this, it's like this weird spot right now. The situation that we're in, you can watch this movie at home, but if you do let your little kids watch it and they want to watch it ad nauseum, I guess it saves you because you can't. And maybe you'd get annoyed watching it a billion times, but she was a little perturbed that her kids weren't able to just pop this in and watch it whenever they wanted. So I don't know. That's a little bit weird, but I love that kids are enjoying this. I love that a lot of adults I know are enjoying this. That said, I did not really enjoy this that much, but that's okay. Anna Kendrick, I typically like in things. Her as a voice actor, I don't know that I'm sold, but I mean, I do appreciate her singing. I would say the standout for me in this film was Kelly Clarkson as the Queen of Country. I really, really loved her acting and her performances as Delta. And we'll talk more about some of the different like music trolls and kingdoms and when we get into spoilers. But I didn't know it was Kelly Clarkson at first, and I'm like, is that Anna Paquin? I didn't know Anna Paquin could sing.
That was the game we were playing.
And then, and then Jim's like, I don't think that's Anna Paquin. And then he starts looking it up, and I'm like, wait, why is Simon Cowell like in my brain? Kelly Clarkson, you know. So definitely a lot of fun figuring out the voices. Dwayne Johnson was in this movie, guys, believe it or not. There's a cavalcade of stars lending their voices. Yeah. So I agree, Jim. It's fun to try and figure out who's who and who's doing what. But my advice here would be, if you are a parent and your kids want to see this movie, I would maybe try to distract them for now, not because the movie's bad, but because you can't. I mean, you may not be in a position to spend $20 every 2 days to keep re-renting this ad nauseum. So maybe let them watch the first one again and then show them Frozen 2 or something. And then when this is out for regular rental or for purchase for $20 in a couple months, maybe that's the time to pick it up. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if these studios and outlets come up with something for people who want to do the early rental, who would totally buy the movie. Like parents would probably totally buy this movie, but it's a shame they're going to have to spend $20 now and then buy it again later. But I suppose that's what they would do if we were in a movie theater situation, right? They'd probably spend more than $20 bringing their family to the movie,
right,
to see this thing, right? Between all the tickets and the concessions and everything else, you're probably $50-$60 down the road for a family movie experience.
One screening too, like when you go to the theater, that's for one time watching it.
So,
and then when it comes out, go ahead.
My high school friend calculated this. She has 3 kids. Her husband lives with them, obviously, and her brother lives with them, and they all go to the movies together. So for a night out to go see this movie in the theater, and the theater back home is a little more, I don't know, it's a little more expensive. You got to drive 45 minutes to get there. She calculated it as almost $80 when you factor in the gas, the concessions, the movie tickets, all of that, versus $20 to watch it at home. But that would be $80 the economy was getting. I say the economy because it's the theater, the movie studios, blah, blah, blah. Plus the $20 or whatever to buy it when it comes out on video versus just $20. I could see that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things where ultimately this is the scenario we're in, So we're getting the alternative would be to do what Disney's doing, which is just saying, you know what? We have no interest in releasing this stuff on streaming because we're Disney and we want that big box office money. So we're just going to push our stuff till November. And I appreciate that NBC Universal is like, let's try something out. Let's do something a little weird here. It's weird territory for all of us. And I don't know that it's necessarily like refined, kind of like what the process is like. But I do think that the alternative really was like getting nothing new. And here we got something new that is instantly replayable. One of the things that I think was so cool for me about this one, taking the story stuff aside, because the story is a little like is very simplistic because it is for kids, you know. Um, I really appreciated the animation specifically for some of the like background and detail elements. What I mean by that is like a lot of times we tend to think about like what do the characters look like, you know, or how do the characters move. But what I found myself especially drawn to was like the textures on things, especially like the ground or things like that. This world is very much lived in like a like that it's all made out of like felt and cloth and patterns and textures, yarns. So when you look at some like the background elements, sometimes it does look like it's made of suede or have like a print pattern on it. And when something gets torn up, instead of there being dirt, there's like stuffing that comes up. And I think that that was the stuff that I found most like visually appealing. That and then like some of the stuff with like, you know, the way the trolls like responded to some of the music, like the techno trolls doing the little techno beat thing. That was all really fun to watch and very imaginative. I can get why, you know, like, you know, kids are going to enjoy it because there's a lot to look at, but I enjoyed looking at it because when they gave me those things to look at, you know, it wasn't just characters walking on screen and talking. It was like a lot of like kind of creatively playing in that space.
Definitely, like I said, eye candy. There's a lot going on visually in this movie. Now, whether it fits your aesthetic for, you know, for 90 minutes, you know, for the whole movie, that's one thing. But there's a lot going on. Will, like you said, the textures and the kind of there was a lot of effort, I think, put into the animation style and a lot of commitment to the animation style from the first movie and through this one. This one seems to like amp it up a little bit, like add a lot more color and movement. Even though there was a lot in the first, there was definitely noticeably more here. And like you said, there were some moments that I actually like laughed out loud at, and we'll get to those, at least one of those in spoilers. Just kind of the way they characterize some of the characters to the music. That'll be an interesting discussion.
Well, speaking of spoilers, I feel like we're rapidly running out of string.
Hey! Infinity strings?
In terms of how much more we can talk about this movie without getting into spoilers, Jim and Will, are you guys ready to make that transition into spoiler town so we can more freely discuss the film?
Yeah. Let's rock on.
All right.
Rock on,
we're
dude!
officially going to open up the can of spoilers. It's going to spew all over this place. So if you don't want to get our spoiler juice all over you, now is the time to cover yourself up in a blanket, put in some earplugs or something, and come on back in about 15 minutes. Will, I know, is putting the spoiler warning in chat as well. Will, thanks for doing that. Appreciate that. But spoilers for Trolls World Tour are officially fair game. Jim, since you kind of brought something up a little bit that you wanted to talk about, what was one of those laugh out loud moments for you? Kick us off.
Well, okay. I know a lot less about K-pop than I know about many other things. But there was a moment in this movie where a K-pop group, I guess it was a real K-pop band or group, I guess it's called. I don't know if it's a band or a group, but they were like somewhere in 2/3 or halfway through this movie. And just the way they were represented on the screen, like an actual group, and they kind of all moved together, like the leader would say something and then they'd all like strike a pose, and then they'd say another thing and they'd strike a different pose. I was cracking up at that because in a way it was true to the genre, but it was also, I think, a little satirizing it a little bit, just enough to make it kind of funny, at least for me. Will, I know you probably know. I looked it up, and I guess it was a group called Red Velvet, I think. Which is, I think, a big K-pop band right now.
Yeah, I don't know like a ton about them, but that's but that you know what I know. They're Red Velvet, and they're a popular K-pop band who's had like a lot of like little short films and stuff done about them. But yeah, I think that's where the fun of this movie comes from, because The first movie is very much just about trolls versus this other kind of race that they interact with. And this one really gets into showing like all of the different types of trolls. And so I appreciated that we got to see them represented very like visually differently and very musically differently. Each one had its own like texture and feel and sound. The classical ones were like they fly, and the techno ones sort of have like a fin, like almost like they're swimming in the air type thing, you know? Like, I think that that's the type of stuff that they didn't need to include those details. I'm glad they did include those details because it just made the world feel a little more fleshed out. You know, would it have been fun to have played a little bit more with some of the other characters? I think this is probably where I get to my quibble. I think that I think that you could have had a little bit more mileage if maybe along the way they had picked up some friends from these different ones. Like the biggest missed opportunity I think for me is so they meet this penny whistle in the classical world, voiced by Charlene Yee, Brad, who's
I
Ruby
know.
from
Yep.
and then there's a point where they're like, all right, Penny Whistle, let's go on this adventure. Penny Whistle's just like, no, I'm just gonna stay here and work on stuff. And I think that was sort of it felt a little episodic as they went through these worlds. And there was less connective tissue. You pull that Penny Whistle character, you pull another character, and I think you have like a little stronger punchline to your point that you try to get to.
I would agree. And, you know, we get to the end of the movie. We're in spoilers. There's this whole thing about like, well, the 6 different strings or whatever it was represent the 6 main types of music, but the vibrations between the strings are all the other types of music in between the genres, right? Like, what did we have? There was yodeling was one of the you know, music stylings that was brought out. There was gosh, my brain is
a good one was
Hip-hop.
Yeah.
Reggaeton.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that was such a brilliant way of like handling, right? Like the diversity of music, right? The foundations and the things built on top of it. But then we get to this whole thing about like the different trolls like coming together and singing their part, like Barb adding her rock voice and Poppy doing the pop thing. And then, you know, the techno and the funk trolls. I thought that was cool, but like how much more powerful would it have been if like, I don't know, they met a techno troll on their tour and techno troll came along with them and we got to know techno troll.
Yeah.
We had Sam Rockwell, we think country troll around for a while. And that was awesome. That was the best part of the whole movie for me.
Yes.
And then we find out, of course, you know, he's a yodeling assassin or whatever, but bounty hunter.
Yodeling assassin.
The Yodelorian.
There you go. But I think, well, you know, to your point, not picking those people up on sort of this like Toy Story road trip kind of thing just steals a lot of the power away from the ending where everybody suddenly is coming together. And, you know, why are they doing that? Oh, because it's Poppy and Branch sang a song. Like it just steals a lot of the gravitas from that for me.
Yeah, I think it's got this movie, just like a lot of these movies, has a villain problem too. Barb, who's kind of the villain for most of the movie. Why the Rock, you know, why the Rock people had to be the bad, you know, the power hungry ones was kind of crazy. Could have been any of them, I guess. But yeah, I wish we had known a little bit more about her. I mean, we got to meet her dad in, you know, Ozzy Osbourne's kind of cameo thing. But yeah, but all we got was a caricature and not a real character. I just wish they had fleshed the character out a little bit. Like for anybody who saw the first movie, I forget what the princess's name was in that movie. That was a fully fleshed out character. We learned a lot about her and her plight and, you know, her wants and ambitions and stuff. At least we got a character in that movie. Mm-hmm. In this movie, I think it just went so fast from thing to thing to thing to thing that we really never got much in terms of that. Now, granted, I know, is it fair of me to kind of foist that criticism on a movie like this? I don't know. I just know that it works better for me if I know something about the characters rather than just, oh, she's the evil one who plays rock, and oh, she's the nice one who you know, who is Pop, but you know, she doesn't know that she's been kind of living in a privilege bubble all her life and been gaslit by everybody around her, telling her the way things are, we're supposed to be. There's a little bit of that going on too in the movie, and that was kind of interesting. But very much like this whole 6-string thing was very much a parallel to Endgame and the Infinity Stones, right? It was really just kind of a retread of that concept, right? We'll take 6 different colored things, put them together, and you get this power chord that rules the world, right?
One of the things that I think I liked about the message, and I do agree, I think the ending didn't. They had a better message on paper than I think that they had on screen at the end, because we have this protagonist in Poppy whose whole thing all the way through is like, oh, we all need to sing in harmony together. That's my mission, is so that we can all just sing together. If we're all doing things the same, then everyone's great. And I like that. Yeah, and I like that. And she's our main character. And I like that she basically gets called out and put in her place for that, and just like, well, no, like, the differences are like what's great about us. And that's a really good message for a kids movie, because I know there are a lot of these movies. I mean, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and there was a lot of content that was directed to me about how we're all the same. We're all one people. We're all this type of thing. And it really does just sort of like whitewash a whole thing, when like really that we do have these different backgrounds and these different experiences. And it's those differences that make things more interesting and make the world so much more interesting. I like the fact that this film had that, but it delivers that up until the very, very end of the movie. It twists it over, and then they all sing like that one kind of pop-led song. And that's where I felt like it fell apart a little for me, because they sort of fell back. They sort of like said, look, Poppy, you're wrong. That's not the way we should do things. But then everyone does unite under Poppy's thing anyway. So for me, it's like, it was really, really good up until like the message wise, up until like that song at the end. I really would have liked if that final song was in much more discordant. Like, I really wish that it was like the techno was just like fiercely techno and the country was fiercely country or whatever.
I mean, the perfection would be in the imperfections at that point, right? And it really bothered me that like there's this whole great story, where Branch is basically telling Poppy like, you're supposed to listen to your friends, you're supposed to listen to the people that you're the queen of. Like, you don't listen to anybody. And then she learns her lesson, and she tells her dad, I should have listened to you. And what's the first thing her dad says? No, I'm glad you didn't listen to me. You should always do your own thing. And I feel like, especially for kids, that's a bit of a dangerous message, because if mom and dad are like, you shouldn't play out in the street because you could get hit by a car, and the little girl's like, well, I'm like Queen Poppy, I'm going to do what I want. Beep, beep, honk. Bye, little girl. It's just not a really good way to, guys, it's hug time.
Yeah.
We got a hug.
Oh, hug. Okay, hug time.
Yeah, all right, come on in. Bring it in.
Time,
You got a hug.
Bring it in.
Hugs.
Oh, that feels so good. We don't have to think about child death anymore. Anyway.
And we get to do it from 6 feet away.
In some cases, more than 600 miles away.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, any final thoughts on Trolls World Tour before we wrap things up and move on to some plugs?
You mentioned that there wasn't an original song in this one, and I think you're right, which is weird for me, because one of the things I liked so much about the very first one, and maybe there was an original song in this one that I missed. The first one did have an original song, like the big, big song at the end of the movie was actually nominated for a best original song at the Oscar, and it was probably my favorite song of the ones that was nominated around that year. And so I went into this one like looking for like that next like just like super fun, like, disposable but fun pop song. And I got a bunch of medleys, and they were fun, they were great or whatever, but like there wasn't like that new thing that like that new earworm for me.
No. And who knows? Maybe that's because they wanted to just kind of even the playing field for all the different kinds of music even though it was, I think, probably a little bit pop heavy. There were a couple things mentioned in this movie that I thought were really interesting. Number one was there was a line, and I think it wasn't really handled in more than just a couple of lines, where it says like the winners write the history, right? That was mentioned in this movie, where I think it was Poppy all along. I think I don't know how she felt. She was told that like the strings were like given out to all these all these groups, right? The 6 groups. Whereas in fact, somebody, I think was it the pop side, just like
from her side,
right, busted it all apart. So she was, as I said earlier, a little bit gaslighted by this history that was told that was false. That was kind of interesting. I wish they had dove into that a little bit more, but maybe it was a little too heavy for that. And then there was one that kind of ticked me off during the country scene, right? This pretty country song that's very sad, right? Obviously over the top sad about dying. Like, and then you die was the name of the song or something like that. Was that, I don't know, that might have been original. I don't know. I don't know if I've ever heard that one before, but it's like somebody at some point in the movie said, well, I guess she doesn't know that all songs should just make you feel happy. And I'm like, no, go ahead and jump on that and say something about that, please, movie. And it just never did.
Well, to be fair, it did, though. Branch, I think, is the one, unless it was the James Corden character. One of them was like, yeah, but sad songs sometimes make you feel so much. And I appreciated that they called that out. Mm-hmm. But it was like a blink and you miss it line.
Is that from an Elton John song? Sad songs say so much.
Well, it is now. I don't know. We're just No.
Yeah. So there were some nuggets in this movie that I thought were interesting. But like I said, I would hope that kids, if they watch this movie, do resonate, take some of the message away, or is it just going to be lost in this melee of bright colors, lots of action, and cover songs? I don't know.
Kids are sponges, and I think that there is a lot of. And Brad, I mean, we had different formative media than obviously a kid from 2020 would have, but we got a lot of our moral messaging from media. And we got that at a super young age. And some of that holds up, some of it doesn't, some of it holds up with different nuance, but we still received that from our Christmas specials and our very special episodes and our G.I. Joe PSAs or whatever it was. And we absorbed that like a sponge. For me, I was just thinking about this the other day. Growing up as a kid in the 80s, one of my biggest fears was being trapped inside of a discarded refrigerator, because Punky Brewster and like every television show had the episode where some kids get stuck inside the refrigerator, and then because they're playing around and they shouldn't do that. And that was not a concern that I've never seen, to this day, I don't think I've ever seen just like a discarded like refrigerator sitting around. So it's not a thing that was like actually like going to impact me, but that media impacted me so much that to this day, I still think about that. And so I think about kids watching this too. And I think that like, they're going to enjoy the songs, they're going to enjoy like the colors and like the stuff, but the messaging gets through. The messaging does get through. And granted, like maybe not all of the nuance of all of the messaging is going to get through. And I wish that it had been stronger in the way it executed some of that messaging, but I'll still give it credit for having, at the end of the day, a good message that I think's at least, a non-zero number of children are going to internalize.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd agree with you there. Definitely. And well, it only takes one discarded refrigerator to harm a child. Just takes one.
It only takes one. Just one.
Oh, goodness. Well, guys, I'm going to do something I've never done on this show before we close out our troll conversation. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a little inspired by Animal Crossing. So welcome to the Brad Harris DIY recipe moment. Did your kids love watching Trolls World Tour? Do you want your kids to embrace the power of music? Get some of that old, brightly colored yawn out of the closet, cut that yarn into strings, one of each different color, and give those strings to your kids. And when they bring you the pink string for pop, you can put pop music on. When they bring you the techno string, you can introduce them to techno. Help further their music education in this complicated time with some 25-cent yarn out of the closet you forgot about. Boom! There it is. What do you think?
I think that's really good. Here, you know what? 2,000 bells.
Yes!
I will buy that recipe.
Would the ultimate power chord have value in the game?
Yes.
Is it like
I would say so.
Yeah. The ultimate power chord, man.
Got to catch them all. No, I do like that, though, because things like this are movies like this. The value in them, yeah, it's in the messaging, but I think probably even more importantly, it's in the conversations that you have with your children about the messaging. Right. What did you learn from this? What did you experience? And Brad, to your point there, coming up with some sort of like fun activity or some sort of way to put like that, that kinesthetic, like the hands-on style of learning with like the absorbing the visual and the audio and all of that stuff together, I think is just so incredibly powerful. So yeah, I'm on board for that.
Whoop, whoop. All right. Well, that was a fun conversation. I'm glad that we were able to see a new movie at home, even though it wasn't at the theater. Still a fun experience. I would say Jim and I at least are struggling a little bit with the whole like phones away thing during new movies when watching them at home. Especially with this one. Especially with this one, because we're like looking up actors because we couldn't figure out some people and their voices. But our cats really don't mind when we're on our phones because they could give a shit about the movies we're watching anyway. So I think it's all right. But definitely looking forward to getting back into a physical movie theater ASAP.
Maybe if we had watched it in the movie watching room, we might have, paid more attention to the rules of no phones. I'm just saying.
Well, you guys true.
You guys should like hang a little like a little like box outside of the movie room door, and like just leave your phones there when you go into the movie room. Yeah,
we should try that.
That's the thought. We could do that, but I won't. All right. Well, listen. Let's do some plugs real quick as we look to wrap up the show. Of course, plugs is the part of our show where we put things on your radar that we love. Maybe we think you might love. It can be movies, can be TV, could be music, video games, whatever the fuck. We've suspended all rules, and I just said the F word while reviewing a kids movie. Although technically we're in plugs, so we're not reviewing the kids movie anymore. So I'm okay, right?
Yes. Although we need like sugar. Like if we're gonna curse, we gotta do it the troll way.
Mother fudger.
Wow.
All right. So, Jim, let's start with you. What have you got as your plug this week?
All right. I'm not going to plug a movie, although there have been a couple of movies I watched that I probably could plug. I'm actually going to plug an upcoming movie, something that we can watch in about a week or so. I did tweet about it from our account earlier today. It's a Netflix documentary, and of course Netflix is on a roll with their documentaries right now with all the documentary content we have. We've covered the Tiger King doc series on here. This one is called Circus of Books. I don't know if anybody saw the trailer. I think it just dropped today. This is a Circus of Books documentary that's coming to Netflix, and it's about the story of the couple, this Jewish couple, a man and woman, who ran a place in LA called Circus of Books, which was basically a gay bookstore.
Whoa. You're telling me it's not a bookstore with a circus theme?
I don't know what kind of circus was going on in there. Maybe something, but I don't know. Maybe the documentary will talk about it. All I know is what I saw in the trailer today, and I was instantly like, "Oh my god, I need this documentary right now!" Because first of all, it was advertised as the stories we tell of gay porn bookstores. So, I mean, come on, that's two things I love mashed together. I think it's going to be worth it. I think it's interesting because they've run this bookstore, or maybe it's a couple of bookstores for I don't know how many years now. But it certainly, I get the impression that it started maybe in the 70s or so, or maybe early 80s, through the
76.
AIDS crisis. And it has the potential to be a great documentary. I would anybody if you're inclined to watch trailers, I would say go and seek this trailer out right now. Circus of Books. The actual documentary is coming onto Netflix on the 22nd of April. I think it's next Wednesday. So by the time this podcast is out, it'll be probably a week away. So check it out. It's called Circus of Books documentary. Check that
Jim,
trailer out.
You're very right on this. So this one was actually one of our specialty screenings that we played at Eglet this last year.
Oh wow!
And to if anyone is kind of like, well, sounds interesting, but I don't know, it's a documentary. It was our probably our like strongest like audience pulling film, or at least one of them from this last year. Scott's not a big documentary fan. Scott's my partner, and it was his favorite thing from the festival. He just absolutely loved it. He was enraptured by it. So I hope I'm not talking it up too much, but Circus of Books is definitely the goods.
Yeah,
there's only one thing I want to know. There's only one thing I want to know. Only one thing I would like to know. And Jim, if you think it's a spoiler, Will, don't answer. Is there like full frontal male nudity in it? I'm wondering if Netflix is crossing that line. Jim, would that be a spoiler before Will answers?
I don't know if it would be a spoiler, but I don't know the answer. So because I haven't seen it, but
if there is, it wasn't like strong enough that it like that I recalled it. But I mean, they do spend a lot of time in a gay porn bookstore, and so I don't remember how many dicks that I saw in that, although there are a ridiculous number of dildos.
Right. In the thumbprint, in the what's it called? Thumbnail for the trailer. That's on our Twitter account right now is the lady who owns the bookstore standing next to a rack of dildos. So there's a ton of dick. I just don't know if there's any live male frontal,
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, looking forward to checking that out next week, relative, of course, to when we're recording this episode. Will, what have you got for your plug?
It's hard because I haven't watched a ton of movies. So while there's some good ones out right now that you should check out if you haven't recently, like Parasite and Portrait of a Lady on Fire are both on Hulu now. But we've talked about them a bunch on this show. Those are like my top 2 films of last year. I guess what I'm going to plug instead is a video game. And I'm not going to do Animal Crossing because we've talked a lot about Animal Crossing, although you should also play Animal Crossing because it's literally all Brett and I talk about. But I also, so they did a relaunch. This is a good time to be a gamer, not just because the isolation stuff, but also last year, the games that came out around the same time were not that great comparatively. And here we've got both Animal Crossing, Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I haven't gotten to yet. I haven't gotten to it yet, but Persona 5 Royal, that's what I'm going to plug. It's just a brilliant JRPG video game where you are a bunch of high school kids who discover that you can go into this other world and fight these these demon monsters. It's a very mature game with a lot of like the gameplay based around the social interactions that you meet with all the different people you meet. It's a very long game. It's going to be 100 to 120 hours to get through this damn thing. But I'm having a blast with it pretty much every day. When I get done with work, I do all of my Animal Crossing stuff. And once I've sort of done my stuff there, I log that off and then I log in and play a few hours of Persona. So Persona 5 Royal's out. You should play it.
Well, as someone who's never played any of the Persona games, do you have to play the previous games to enjoy this one?
I never played Persona 1 through 4. I bought Persona 5 a few years ago, and Persona 5 Royal is the like remake slash they added some extra stuff. So you can dive right into Persona 5 Royal, having played nothing of it, and you'll get into it like right away.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, it feels weird to plug another video game. I was going to plug a game too, and I actually thought initially that's where you were going. I was going to plug Final Fantasy VII Remake because Final Fantasy VII, hands down, has one of the best stories ever. And I loved playing the original, but the remake, man, as much as I love the gameplay, if I could just watch like a 2.5 hours cinematic of the story, that would be the most perfect movie ever. I think I'm really loving it right now. But we already plugged a video game, so I'm gonna half plug and pivot. Can that be a hashtag? Hashtag
Half plug pivot.
Half plug pivot. Yeah.
I'm gonna plug a TV show that has been getting me through quarantine. It's also been my stalwart companion while I've been playing some Animal Crossing. Well, in these tumultuous times of quarantine and awful political craziness, I have returned to the loving embrace of The West Wing on Netflix. I started over at episode 1, and the show makes me feel so many wonderful feelings. It also makes me feel sad sometimes, but like in a good way, in like a cathartic, soul cleansing way. The show is like chicken soup for the human heart, and I get that some people like maybe take issues with the show's like liberal politics and let's all hold hands and kumbaya, stances at some points. But I really love the show a ton. It's been a few years, Jim, I think since you and I kind of watched some of it together. And man, it's just been so mood uplifting to put that on TV instead of watching like COVID live update, news videos. So there you go. If you haven't seen The West Wing yet, or you just want to revisit it because it's been a while, it is all streaming right now on Netflix.
I mean, it's just I'm not rewatching it with you, although I am catching bits and pieces when you watch it, and I come out from work or whatever and down for lunch. It's amazing, and I think, oh my god, this show played against what's going on now, in the White House and in DC and in politics in general. It's just gotten so much further apart. Like it's insane how like. I don't know. I don't know how to draw that comparison anymore. They're two totally different worlds now, and that makes me sad just thinking about that. Right? Just knowing that that's the reality. That this TV show, which was fiction, has gotten so far towards fantasy now. When you think about politics, it's crazy.
Wow, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. But good deal.
Yeah, if you want some political fantasy, I guess The West Wing is your
political fantasy. I'm tweeting that right now.
We have a new genre, ladies and gentlemen. It lives between the two strings of political dramas and high fantasy shows.
Right.
All right.
Which two strings am I supposed to bring you for that one, Brad?
Yeah, we'll figure it out. If you have a glittery diamond string and a glowing blue string, I think we can make it work. But hey, in case anybody has been listening tonight, or whatever time of day it is when you're listening on digital tape delay, I just wanted to, from all of us to all of you, just say we appreciate you folks sticking with us in this crazy quarantine time right now. Daniel, before he left to avoid the troll spoilers, said that he had to bounce, but he appreciates us keeping up a regular schedule during this time. We've heard from several folks who've just said, they kind of plan their week around MBP, and that kind of blows my mind that people do that people draw comfort from just having the show on our kind of normal night, normal time. Sometimes we do have to pivot a little bit, but we really appreciate that people find comfort in what we do. I mean, we're just three guys who love gabbing about movies, but we love gabbing about movies with you. So thanks for being part of the show. Thanks for being here. And Jim, Will, if people want to chat in between shows, maybe we can let them know how they can do that. Jim, where can people find you online?
Well, two things. You could find us as a group through our Twitter account at MB Podcast. But you can find me under my Twitter account at JJP Out West. Those are my initials, JJP Out West, all one word. That's my Twitter account where I love to tweet and talk about movies. And then also on my Facebook account, Jim Pugliafico. That's my name. Find me there. Not one of these fake Barry names either. It's my real name.
All right. Thanks so much. And Will, how can people interact with you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter. My handle there is at whatever cove. You can find me on Facebook. Just look for William Lindis. You can also find me on Letterboxd. Look for William Lindis there. And Brad, to kind of the point that you had said before, if themes are really, really rough right now for a lot of people, and sometimes you just need to like vent or like to reach out and get to another human being. So I'm going to say do something I haven't done before on here, which is just like, if you are that person, just like random listener who's hearing this, and you just need another human being to like acknowledge you right now, because I get it. It sucks being quarantined and I reach out to me. I'd be very happy to just like, have my ear bent for as long as you need it.
Mm-hmm. We're all in this together. So whether you're listening to the show, whether you want to tweet us, whether you just want to say hi on Facebook, we would love that. Please do. And you can find me on Twitter at iBradPro. If you're watching via YouTube, you can actually see my handle right here on the screen. But again, that's at iBradPro. I'm on Letterboxd under the same name, and on Facebook under my name, Brad Harris. Feel free to send us a message. Steve Scott says, been too long since I've tuned in live. As always, you guys rock. Steve Scott, thank you so much. Good to see you. Sorry it's right at the tail end as we wrap up here, but definitely a pleasure. Glad to have you with us, and glad to have all of you, whether you're listening live or through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your podcast medium of choice is. We appreciate your support of the show, and we look forward to seeing y'all next time. Goodbye, everybody. See ya.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.